Hello and welcome to Runkle of the Bailey. My name is Ian Runkle. I'm a Canadian criminal defense and firearms lawyer. Today we're going to continue reviewing the Alek Minassian police interrogation tape, so this will be part 2. Just to recap, Alek Minassian is accused of the Toronto van attack, which of course is demonetizing this video as we speak, but that's 10 counts of murder, 16 counts of attempted murder. And what we saw in the last video is he gave up a whole lot of potential issues. He made the Crown's job much easier on voluntariness, on right to counsel issues, on issues about strip searches, about all sorts of things. So everything he's done thus far has made the Crown's case a little easier. Let's see if that continues. I bet it will. All right, and here's where we left off. Here we go.
Following that, my understanding is, and I might have gotten the sequence of events mixed up, so correct me if I'm wrong. There's been a lot going on today, and I've been very busy. But my understanding is, at some point, if I'm not mistaken, a police officer in a suit came down, and he told you that he updated you with respect to the charges that were going to be laid.
Yes.
Okay. And do you remember what he said to you?
Yes. So originally the charges were 9 counts of first-degree murder.
Right.
Then later on it got updated to 10 counts of first-degree murder plus 15 counts of attempted murder.
Exactly. Yes, that's my understanding.
So he's got a right to be advised of the charges he's facing. And so once they changed their mind and increased the number of charges, they had to let him know that that was what was going on. And so the detective is confirming that, in fact, they have taken care of that obligation. They're getting his admission that that was done so on the record.
So my understanding is, as the night progressed and as we were learning more information, it came to our attention that 7 people have died. Sorry, 9 people have died. I apologize. As a result of an incident that occurred on Yonge Street. And so subsequent to that, my understanding is the officers came down and they spoke to you to advise you that the charges would be upgraded to 9 counts of first-degree murder. Do you understand what first-degree murder is?
It's a premeditated murder and completely intentional and considered to be what's known as in cold blood.
And that is not the standard here, but I think the detective is probably going to correct him.
Well, yeah, that's a fairly precise way of describing it. What we call it premeditated. It means premeditated. You understand what premeditated means?
Yes, it would mean that someone planned for that murder in advance.
Right, planning and deliberation. In other words, if somebody committed first-degree murder, they would have took the time out to think about what they were going to do. Sit down and deliberate over the plan. So in other words, they were going to sit down and go over the details of the plan, figure out what it is they were going to do, how they were going to execute the plan, and so on and so forth, to commit a murder.
So now he's expressed this using the legal language, planned and deliberate. It's not the only way to get to first-degree murder, but it's sort of the core way. And planned and deliberate is... that's more than the U.S. standard. The U.S. standard talks about, in many places, premeditated. And premeditated can be just like a very quick thing. Somebody saying, I'm going to kill that guy, grabs a thing, and then kills him. In Canada, we have a lengthier requirement such that it involves at least the potential for some serious thought put into it. For somebody who's not... we have a larger range for, I guess, a fit of anger would be the way to put it, than the U.S. does. I'm not going to delve too deep into the standard here. I'm being very, very casual with the description. I could go into the standard in more detail in a future video.
Planned and deliberate. That's what it means. So there's a lot of thought and energy that goes into planning to kill somebody. That's what first-degree murder is. Okay. And so initially it was 9 counts of first-degree murder. And do you remember the officer that told you that?
I believe if I remember correctly, it was the officer wearing the suit.
The officer wearing the suit who walked you in here today, or walked you into this room?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now, did he tell you that you could speak to a lawyer again?
Yes.
Okay. So he gave you your rights to counsel again?
Yes.
Okay.
So the reason why the detective is going through this is because once the accused was advised that he's facing this increased jeopardy with another count of first-degree murder, that they have to give him the opportunity to get some updated legal advice. And so he's making sure that that opportunity is confirmed to have happened so that they can't use that argument later. Now, you might think maybe it's not such a big deal when we're talking about adding one count of first-degree murder to a whole bunch of counts of first-degree murder, but they're not going to leave anything to chance here. And frankly, anytime you're adding a first-degree murder count is a big deal. Now, as an example, usually we're not talking about, this level of seriousness, but you can think of somebody, for instance, who's found driving a vehicle, and when the police run the plate, it comes back as stolen. And so the police pull that person over, they arrest them for possession of stolen property, being that motor vehicle. And in the course of, once they've got the guy in the back of the police car, they look up the details of how it was stolen, and they find that it was stolen via a carjacking that involved a lot of violence, and where the suspect described is an exact match for the guy sitting in the back of their police car. So now, in addition to the possession of stolen property, they want to add charges of theft of the motor vehicle, robbery, aggravated assault, and a bunch of other things. And so they tell him that now he's facing those new charges. That kind of requires going back to your lawyer and getting new and additional information, because your lawyer might be a little different in approach if you're just looking at a possession of stolen property versus if you're looking at a robbery and aggravated assault. That's much more serious, and your lawyer's probably going to be even more careful in terms of cautioning you as best they can to prepare you to be in this tiny room that Mr. Minassian finds himself in. So that's why that exists, and that's why the detective is being careful here to establish that that right has already been canvassed and complied with.
And in answer to that caution, that first caution, do you understand? Did you understand what you were being arrested for?
Yes.
Okay. Did you understand that the charges were now being upgraded to 9 counts of first-degree murder?
Yes.
And did you understand that you could call a lawyer again?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you say to the officer in response to calling a lawyer again?
I think I simply just acknowledged. I said, okay.
Okay. And my understanding is he asked you, do you want to speak to a lawyer again? Do you remember what you said to him?
I believe I said no thanks.
Okay.
The reason I gave that response was because since I had already spoken to a lawyer very recently, I felt that I wouldn't be given new information at that point.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah.
So anytime the officer tells you that you've got a right to speak to a lawyer, including you have a right to speak to a lawyer again, take advantage of it. Don't say, oh, well, I know what the lawyer was going to say, because maybe you do, maybe you don't. I'm a lawyer, and if I was sitting in that seat, I would certainly say, you know what, I do want to talk to a lawyer again, because right now he's in the most stressful situation of his life. He could be a brilliant trial attorney, and still he's not going to be thinking straight when he's in that small room and when he's facing these serious kinds of charges. So don't assume you know better. Call the lawyer. But here, once again, he's confirmed that he has waived that right, is what they're going through here. The detective is probably going to be even more careful and confirm that, sort of over-confirm it, if I can sort of use that term.
That makes sense. Okay, that was my understanding. And then subsequent to that, now again, I might have the facts mixed up, just in terms of the chronology. But my understanding is, did somebody come down and take photos of you?
Yes.
Okay. Was that... okay, well, let's maybe touch on that.
It actually happened twice.
Okay.
And initially, the first time it happened was at the very beginning of when I got arrested.
Right.
I sat down in a chair. I had front, left, right. Then later on in the evening, I again had I was standing up in front of that chair and had left, right, front, and back.
Okay, well, let's talk about that. So the first time you had your photo taken, front, left, and right, where was that done?
inside the room with the camera and the fingerprint machine, about 10 steps away from the cell block I was in.
Okay, so they took you out of the cells
Yes.
into what we call the print room.
Yes.
Yeah, and so the booker we call him the booker, the individual that takes your photographs and takes your fingerprints. We call him the booker. Did they take your fingerprints at all?
Yes.
They did, eh? Okay.
And this is very standard booking procedure. They're going to take a picture of him. They're going to take his prints. But they don't, at this stage, get to take his DNA unless they can get a DNA warrant, or if they take that bottle at the end of the day.
It was at the same time that I initially had my picture taken.
Okay, all right, okay. And then from there you were returned to the cell?
Yes.
Okay. And then your photographs were taken once again, or you were photographed once again after that. So you were photographed a second time.
Yes.
Okay. And where did that take place?
In the same room.
In the same room. Okay. Was it by the same officer?
No.
It was by another officer.
Yes.
Okay. And this time you were standing, you said?
Yes.
Okay. The first time you were sitting
Yes.
when you were photographed. The second time you were photographed, you were standing.
Yes.
Okay. And the officer who took the second set of photos, what was he wearing?
He was uniformed.
In a uniform. Okay. And was he the individual who took you out of the cell?
Yes.
Okay. And then my understanding is you returned to the cell.
Yes.
Okay. And then at some point you also turned over your clothing.
Yes.
Okay. When did that happen?
That happened at the very beginning when I was brought to the police station.
Okay. All right. That happened at the very beginning. So at what point was it?
That was initially before I was put into my cell. I was in some other holding room.
Right.
That just had some chair there. At that point, I had all my clothes taken off, just to be seized as evidence.
Okay.
And then I was given my underwear back. I put it back on, and then I was given an orange jumpsuit. And then 2 minutes later, I was taken out of the orange jumpsuit, and then I was given this white bodysuit.
Okay. And that was before you went into the cell.
Correct.
Okay.
And depending on what he was charged with, they might not have given back his underwear. If he was charged with certain sexual offenses, they probably would have kept it in order to do DNA swabs. I'm not sure what entirely they would have been looking for in his clothes here based on the nature of the attack, but I guess it's possible if a window was open, there could have been some DNA transfer or something else. Similarly, there might be reports or video images that show somebody dressed in a particular fashion, and so having that clothing preserved could be helpful because then they can match it to witness reports or match it to pictures. If they let it out the door, then of course it's going to be gone. So they're going to want to seize that.
And so let's talk about that for a minute. So when they took your clothes off, you were put in a room, you said?
Correct.
Okay. And did the officers explain to you why they were taking your clothes?
As evidence.
As evidence, okay. And
also just because of concerns that I might have something within the clothes.
Okay, so we call that a level 3 search.
Yeah, actually, now that you mention it, I remember that exact term being used.
A level 3 search.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we do that in cases where we're dealing with individuals who we don't know, because we don't know you, who are involved in relatively serious events, which unfortunately you are. And so we do it for our safety, as well as your safety, as well as to ensure that we're collecting, all the evidence we possibly can, right? Because the idea at the end of the day is we want to come to the truth as to what's going on. That's the bottom line, right? So we have to do these things, and sometimes they're intrusive, but we try and do it in a manner that is as dignified as possible. So when you had your clothes taken off, were you completely naked?
I was only completely naked for about 10 seconds.
Okay, all right. And did you have some privacy in this room?
This room?
No, the room you had. They took your clothes off.
Actually, to be honest, I don't remember. I think there may have been some officers there.
Okay.
Because my face was towards the wall the entire time.
Okay, all right. How many officers were there?
I think about 4.
Oh, 4.
I don't remember the exact number, to be honest.
Okay. Were there any female officers?
I don't believe so.
Okay, all right.
So he's going through this to try to establish that the strip search, because taking his clothing is a strip search, is done in a fashion that doesn't contravene the rules laid out in the Queen and Golden, which I've done a video on. I will toss in a link right about here to that. But let's continue. That's why he's going through all of this, and in particular, that's why he's asking if there were any female officers present, because the case law suggests that that's a big no-no.
Was anything being videotaped?
I don't remember seeing a camera in that room.
Okay, all right, okay. But nevertheless, you were only completely naked for about 10 seconds.
Correct.
Okay, and then they gave you an orange jumpsuit?
Yes.
Okay. And then you were brought to the cells, you spoke to a lawyer, you photographed
Well,
twice.
actually, I was switched into this white bodysuit before being taken into my a cell, because I was only in that orange jumpsuit for about 2 minutes.
Oh, okay, okay. And the reason behind putting you into a white jumpsuit, did they tell you?
I believe if they did tell me, I don't remember the reason.
Okay, okay. The reason would have been to keep your feet protected, right? Because I don't think you had the boots on the orange jumpsuit.
Oh yeah, I remember they said something about there wasn't any footwear.
Right, right. Okay.
So I get this sort of sense that he's trying to show off how much he knows, how much he remembers. And that's really the wrong approach, because if they see that that's sort of what you're doing, that you're there's so much that the detective, and this is a very skilled detective, this guy is no slouch by any stretch, but he's going to latch onto that, and he's going to make as much use of it as he can. He's already been making use of it, but we haven't even got to sort of the substance of what the detective really wants to ask about. Right now, he's just doing his homework and setting up that as many possible charter arguments or other arguments down the road, he's shutting as many doors as he can on the defense.
Okay, so from there, you went into the white jumpsuit, then you were placed in the cells, you spoke to your lawyer,
Yes.
and then you were photographed twice?
Correct.
Okay. In addition, the officer came down to advise you that you'd be charged with 9 counts of first-degree murder, right?
Yes.
Okay, and my understanding is, I believe it was the same officer, at some point in time, he then came down to advise you that you were going to now be charged with 10 counts of first-degree murder and 15 counts of attempted murder.
Correct.
Okay. And during the sequence of events, at what point did that officer come down and tell you that?
The upgraded charge was after I spoke to my lawyer.
Okay.
And you see how often he's sort of phrasing things as, maybe I don't know the sequence of events. Can you tell me what that was? And can you tell me what happened next? Of course the detective knows, because this is his job. He will have spent the intervening time preparing for this very carefully. So he would have known exactly what's going on, and he'd know exactly where he needs to take the accused through this interview in order to get the information out that he wants. So when he says that he doesn't know what's happening and maybe he's a little confused and he needs the accused to sort of fill in the blanks for him, he's really just adopting a rhetorical stance that encourages the accused to speak and to fill in the blanks.
How many times did you speak to a lawyer?
Once.
Okay. So it would have come after the first time you spoke to the lawyer. It would have come after the officers telling you you were being upgraded. The counts would be upgraded to 9 counts of murder. So it would have been some time after you spoke to your lawyer that they told you that you were now being charged with 10 counts of murder, first-degree murder, and 15 counts of attempt murder, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Did the officers explain to you again your rights as far as calling a lawyer?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you say to them in response to that?
I simply said okay.
Okay. Okay. And anything else?
No.
My understanding is the officers asked you, do you wish to call a lawyer?
Yes, they did. So the second time I said no thanks, and the reason, as I said before, the reason I gave that answer was just because I had very recently spoken to a lawyer, so I thought that I wouldn't be given any additional information at that point.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Well, here's what I'm telling you here today. It's important you understand what I'm saying. Okay. You're going to be charged with 10 counts of first-degree murder. Okay. As well as 15 counts of attempted murder. I've read you your rights to counsel, your caution, secondary caution, and so forth. Do you wish to speak to a lawyer?
And the right answer to this is always yes. If you don't have any money, there's lawyers who will take your call for nothing. And, you're going into a real challenging situation here. Having a lawyer help, even just having the break here, even just getting out of the room and being able to sort of reset mentally would be a tremendous advantage for this accused. We'll see if he takes the smart move here.
The choice is yours.
Yes, I will speak to a lawyer.
You want to speak to a lawyer?
Good man. Props. He hasn't been doing well so far, but let's see how this goes.
Yes, please.
Okay. Did you have a lawyer, or did you want to speak to duty counsel?
I'd like to speak to duty counsel, please.
Okay, no problem. So can you just hold on? Can you sit tight for 1 second? I'm just going to exit the room here for 1 minute. Okay. If you just sit tight, I'll be right back, and then I'll take you down, and we can do that.
So you'll notice that once the accused indicated that he wanted to speak to a lawyer, the detective very much changed how he was approaching things. There's no further follow-up questions right here, because anything that happens in this window between the accused asserting his right to counsel and the detective actually providing him with the opportunity to exercise that right is going to be very constitutionally suspect. So if he were to continue on the interview, he might have problems getting this in. The other thing he doesn't do is he doesn't argue with him. He doesn't say, oh, are you sure you want to talk to a lawyer? Because they don't want to get into that game. They run the very real risk if they start playing that game that the courts are going to say, no, he exercised his right to counsel and you didn't give it to him. And so everything after that doesn't go in. And if you look at what's gone in so far, it's just been procedural homework stuff. So if this was the end of the interview, this would be a great place for the accused. But they're going to make sure that he gets into a phone room and has a chance to speak to a lawyer. Now they might be leaving him to sit here. Just mute that audio stream for a moment. They might be leaving him to sit for a while, or they might just be getting things ready to go. But at this point, somebody is almost assuredly watching him in, live, just to make sure that they see what he's doing. If he does anything that might suggest an opening. Similarly, if he were to start doing something, like trying to use those drapes to fashion something to end his life, they'd probably have guards rushing in immediately. So he may think he's alone, but he's going to be being monitored here. And it's very difficult at this stage to not fidget and not squirm, but really every little bit of body language might be giving something away. So the more you can just sort of sit in peace, the better that ends up working for you. Although I recognize that's really hard to do.
This is just an audio recorder here. I'm going to take this with me, okay?
Uh-huh.
I'm not going to have any trouble with you, right?
No.
You promise me that?
Yes.
Okay. I appreciate that. I'm just going to take you down the hall. We'll just put you in a room.
Okay.
And somebody pointed this out, a commenter, and it's very much true. One thing you'll notice I commented before about the layout of the room and how the accused is backed into a corner, but you'll notice as well that they have different chairs. So the detective's got a nice comfortable chair with armrests. The accused, no armrests. And you'd be surprised at how much of a difference that makes in terms of the comfort that you enjoy while sitting in a chair. Having those armrests is very helpful for sort of your back support. You can start to develop strain when you're sitting in a chair without armrests for a lengthy period of time. And of course, that's not accidental. If you're feeling a little uncomfortable and you want to, you want to get out of the interview room, the detective is going to make it sound like the way to get out of the interview room fast because you're uncomfortable is to spill everything. So even the little things are not accidental. Everything is planned.
And they're on the make a phone call.
I wonder if we'll see somebody come in to take the water bottle. Oh.
Okay, Alex has been placed in the major crime unit number 1. I'm going to call duty counsel.
Sometimes during a gap like this, you might see somebody come in and take the water bottle, possibly replace the water bottle. It doesn't seem like that's happening here, but it could have.
Phone call has been made to duty counsel, and we're just waiting for a call back.
So what that means is that the accused called duty counsel and couldn't reach them. And this is fairly common. You might call a lawyer and the lawyer's in court, the lawyer's asleep, the lawyer is whatever, because, we're people with lives. We have often very busy schedules. And so, but once they make the call, they have to be provided a reasonable opportunity to do so, which usually means giving them some time for the lawyer to call them back. So we'll see what happens here.
Just give me a sec, I'll be right back. Sure.
You can see how he's sort of struggling to find a comfortable sitting position there.
Okay. So, before we go any further, just tell me what happened from the time we left this room until the time we came back. What took place?
My lawyer told me not to answer.
Okay.
And this is a great thing to say because, my lawyer told me not to answer any questions. If you think of sort of military training, at least as depicted in the movies, they talk about, name, rank, serial number, and that's it. And so you see some of these old military movies and military interrogations where somebody's being asked things like, would you like a glass of water? And they repeat their name, their rank, and their serial number. It's a very frustrating tactic for a police detective when they have somebody who just answers everything with, my lawyer advised me not to answer any questions. And they'll say things like, well, I'm just asking you about your job. My lawyer told me not to answer any questions. And that sort of stonewalling is very difficult for the detective to overcome. And they'll try. But if somebody can hold to that, it is the fastest means I have seen of a police interview being ended. Because if the detective is very clear that he's not going to get anything, they'll end the interview. But we'll see how well he holds to that because there's still a lot of audio tape remaining on this particular file.
I understand that, okay, and I'm glad you told me that. You know why? Because that tells me you understand what your rights are, okay?
So he's buttering him up here. He's flattering him. And he's also sort of he's trying to push past that denial, which he's allowed to do. You say, my lawyer told me not to say anything. I don't want to answer any questions. They're allowed to keep asking you questions up to the point where it becomes sort of abusive or oppressive or the like.
But you need to understand something, okay? We, the police, have a job to do, okay? And that job includes collecting evidence, speaking to people, trying to understand and uncover what's happened, what took place. and asking questions.
And if you're sitting there in the white bunny suit in a chair with no armrests backed into a corner of a police interrogation room, do you really want to be making the police's job any easier? Sure, that's their job. Straight up, honest question there. But it's not the accused's job to make that job any easier. And he certainly doesn't want to here.
And we're obligated to sit down and speak to people like yourself who are in this position and ask you questions, all right? Your lawyer's right, you don't have to answer any questions, okay? But you need to understand something, Alek, okay? I still have to ask you questions, okay?
So he's basically saying, just because you tell me you don't want to answer any questions doesn't mean I'm going to stop asking them, doesn't mean you get out of here. But again, the quickest way to get them to stop asking questions is for that to be completely useless to them, for that to get them absolutely nowhere. So long as they're getting somewhere, they're going to keep asking questions until they basically feel that they don't have to because they've got everything neatly wrapped up, which means they think that they've got you over a barrel. Until that time, they're going to keep asking you questions, so long as there's some sign that it's getting them somewhere, that they're making some progress, or that they have the hope to make some progress in the future.
And I'm going to ask you questions, all right? And I'm going to talk, okay? And it's not, I'm not doing that to make you feel intimidated or to make you scared or to say things that you don't want to hear, okay? But the bottom line is we have a very difficult job to do, okay? And this is a very, very important matter that we're dealing with here today, all right? So I'm going to ask you questions. If you don't want to answer them, you can tell me you don't want to answer them. Or you don't have to say anything at all. I totally understand that. But as long as we can still maintain that respect that we talked about at the beginning, is that cool?
Yes.
Is that cool? You're not going to offend me, okay? You're not going to make me upset or insult me if you say, Rob, I don't want to answer that question, okay? If you're kicking over the table and screaming, well, that's going to cause a problem, okay? But I'm not going to be offended, okay? And I understand, okay? But you also need to understand that I have a job to do. I have to ask questions, okay? If you don't want to tell me what we did from the time we left, the time we came back, is it fair to say that while we were out, you spoke to a lawyer?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm going to suggest that the only person you had any contact with was with me. Is that right?
What do you mean?
Well, you didn't speak to any other police officers.
Correct.
Right. So I'm the only police officer that was in your custody from the time we left this room until the time we came back. I took you down the hall to a room, placed you into a small room with a seat. I made a phone call, or I had an officer make a phone call to duty counsel. We originally placed one call. We had to wait. We couldn't hear. We didn't hear back, so we placed a second call. We still didn't hear back. I came in and I actually opened the door and I informed you that we were still waiting to call. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. I think I asked you if you wanted to borrow the washroom as well. Do you remember that?
I remember.
Yeah, and you said, what did you say?
I don't recall.
You said you didn't need to borrow the washroom.
Oh, now I remember that.
Okay, all right. And
So again, what he's doing here is because the accused has been off the camera, and there's all sorts of things that could have happened there, he's establishing that nobody in that time did anything to undermine the voluntariness argument. So he didn't have any contact with another officer who threatened him with a length of rubber hose or anything along those lines. He's been offered, the chance to go to the bathroom. He's all of this stuff. So that's what he's really covering here. But the other purpose for this is, you see, he's gotten the accused answering questions again. The accused said, I don't want to answer any questions. Well, he's answering questions again. And so once the detective gets past that barrier and gets the accused back to answering questions, even simple questions, even questions that are bog standard obvious, it's going to be much harder for the accused to get that wall back up and say, I really don't want to answer any questions. So the detective has broken through that, at least for now. We'll see if the accused manages to figure out what's going on.
then finally, we got duty counsel on the line. We put the counsel, the lawyer, we handed the phone over to you. My understanding is his name was Mr. Rodriguez. Did he tell you what his name was?
I don't recall his name.
Okay, he identified himself as Mr. Rodriguez to me. I don't want you to tell me the conversation you had. It's what we call private. But I want to ask you, did you understand the conversation that you had with Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Do you understand what he said to you?
Yes.
Are you satisfied with the information that he's provided you?
Yes.
Okay, great.
So now that he's had another chance to speak to a lawyer, he's going through that again. He's making sure that he gets, you had a full and complete chance to speak to a lawyer, you're satisfied with it, so you can't make any further, arguments about right to counsel if we get anything out of you. And we'll see.
And then from there, you had a lengthy conversation. I only know that because from the time I handed you the phone until the time you knocked on the door, it was quite some time. I'm guessing it was over 10 minutes?
Yes.
At least over 10 minutes, yeah. And then I came to the door and I asked you if things were okay. You knocked on the door, so I opened it. You told me that you'd finished your conversation with a lawyer. I asked you if, how you feeling, if things were okay. You said yes. I asked if you wanted to borrow the washroom again. Remember that?
Yes.
And you said no. And then we walked back right in here. Is that right?
Yes.
And did anybody else talk to you?
No.
Did you talk to anybody else?
No.
Is there anything I'm missing?
No.
That's pretty straightforward, eh? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And then, so my understanding is that's essentially what took place from the time you were arrested right up until the time you were brought into this room. We've covered off basically everything, haven't we?
Yes.
Okay. Did I miss anything?
No.
Anything of importance? If I'm not mistaken, the officers fed you, is that right?
Yes.
Downstairs in the cells?
Yes.
What did they feed you?
Sandwich and juice.
A sandwich and a juice, okay.
These, they will feed people, and he's making sure to establish, oh, this guy's not hungry, he's not, any of these things that might pressure him into confessing. The sandwiches and juice that you get in sort of these settings are pretty awful, but they're not going to kill you. Although sometimes you'll encounter people who are unable to eat them because sometimes they're not provided for religious or moral objections. But I don't think that's really a live issue here.
What was that?
I didn't have access to the time at the time I was fed.
Okay. Are you hungry?
No.
Okay. Did you have anything else to eat today?
I ate before I was arrested.
Okay. And what time was that?
I don't recall.
Okay. Do you remember what you ate?
I don't recall.
Okay. All right. If you're hungry at all, at any point in time, you just let me know.
Oh.
Okay. If you need to borrow the washroom, you just let me know. Okay. I'm going to leave that up to you to tell me. Okay, because I'm not going to know if you're hungry or not. I'm not going to know if you need to go to the washroom. So I'm going to rely on you to tell me that. Is that cool?
Yes.
All right. How much sleep did you have last night?
About 8 hours.
About 8 hours. And how did you sleep?
I slept well.
You slept well. And where did you sleep? Was it your home?
I do not wish to answer that.
Okay. All right.
So again, he's establishing, you're healthy, you're fed, you don't have to go to the bathroom, you can go to the bathroom at any time, you can get more food at any time. This is all going towards voluntariness. So this isn't accidental, he doesn't care about the accused's welfare for any other reason, really. That's why he's going through this, is he's being very careful to establish the groundwork.
Nevertheless, you slept well. Okay. I want to ask you something, Alek, and this is important. Are you on any kind of medication right now?
No.
Okay, so do you take any, what I mean by medication, do you take anything prescribed for any physical injuries or ailments of any type?
I don't wish to answer that.
Okay. What about medication for psychological issues?
I don't wish to answer that.
Okay. Has a doctor, have you seen a doctor recently with respect to any medical issues that I should be concerned about?
I don't wish to answer that.
Okay.
Now here, These are some of the questions that, again, you'll want to talk to your lawyer about, but sometimes it might be worthwhile to answer this kind of question, particularly if you have some sort of health concern that is going to become acute. So if you have something where you've got, you're taking pills for your heart, and if you don't get them, you might die, then you might want to tell them, hey, I need these pills or I'm going to die, so that they can find your pills for you. But assuming that's not the case, he's taking a better approach here with the I don't want to answer. He probably should have been doing that a long time ago.
What about psychological issues?
I don't wish to answer that.
Okay. Alek, can I ask you this? Because it's important. And I'm saying this because I think I know the answer. But am I wrong to understand that in high school you were identified as someone with special needs?
I don't wish to answer that.
Okay. But you did go to Thornley Secondary, didn't you?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. And you graduated from Thornley, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And then following that, my understanding is you went to Seneca.
Correct.
And you were, you're just finishing up, if I'm not mistaken. You're just finishing up your course.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's the Center for Development of Open Technology, CDOT.
No, it's Seneca at York.
Yeah, I realize that, but the program you're taking, isn't it called Center for?
No,
Development
that
of
was
Open Technology?
actually something else.
Oh, okay. All right. What are you taking at Seneca?
Bachelor of Software Development program.
Oh, so you're taking a degree.
Yes.
So Seneca offers a degree in software programming.
Yes.
And that's something that you were aspiring to do. I understand you wanted to become a software developer or designer or software developer.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. And a team leader, is that not right?
Yes.
Is that that's what you were aspiring to do?
So now he's, starting to ask him about his job and, his education and so forth and his aspirations. And again, the detective doesn't care. Like, he doesn't actually want to know about this guy's, they're not friends. They're not going to be going out for beers after this. He's asking this so that he can use this. Right now, he's sort of building rapport. He's establishing, we're having a friendly conversation. So, we're friends. They're bringing it within sort of certain social norms that can be used as pressure and as levers. Once you've sort of accepted certain social graces, it establishes a particular kind of relationship that is useful to the detective here.
Yes. Okay. And as far as work, my understanding is you're not working right now.
I don't wish to answer that.
Okay. All right. Is it fair to say that you had some employment lined up with a company called Sheridan Computers?
I don't wish to answer that.
Oh, okay. All right.
And you see how the accused is sort of trying to answer the questions he feels are harmless and not answer the questions he feels might undermine him or cause him problems. But like everyone else who's in this room, he's not smart enough to know which one is which. The detective is way better at this game than the accused is. And so the accused doesn't know which questions have a hook in them and which ones don't. And he's getting it wrong here because just about every question has a hook in it in some fashion. So the questions that he thinks are innocent are just ones where he has made a mistake and doesn't understand what the detective is accomplishing with that question. So he's trying to play this game where he's able to, pick and choose which questions he wants to answer. And because he doesn't actually understand what's happening here, he's getting it wrong and he's worsening his position. He's helping himself when he doesn't answer questions, but the questions he does answer, he's digging a hole.
I do know that you live at home though, and I do know that you have a mom and a dad, right? I believe your dad, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not pronouncing it right, but his name is Vahi?
I don't wish to answer that.
Okay. And your mom's Sona, and you got an older brother named Haig. And I think he's, probably 28, if I'm not mistaken. Haig?
I don't wish to answer that.
Okay. All right. How are things at home?
Good.
with you and your family?
Yes.
Are you close to your mom and dad?
Yes.
Yeah. And what about your relationship with your brother?
It's good.
I understand you were born in Canada.
Yes.
Yeah, and your parents immigrated to Canada some time ago, and they're originally from Iraq. Is that right?
I do not wish to confirm or deny that.
Okay. All right. Okay. I just say that because we've spoken to your dad, and he's worried about you. I'll tell you that. Okay. And I ask you these questions, and I'm not trying to intimidate. I'm not trying to scare you. Okay. The reason why I ask these questions is because it's important that I get to know you better. All right. We just met for the very first time, and you don't know me. Am I right?
Now think about this. If you're sitting in this chair, how much do you want to know the detective? You know, again, you're not going for beers later. You're not going to be friends. You're not going to have a lasting relationship. This guy is not on your side. He's never going to be on your side. He's an adversary. He's a person who is, his goal at this point is to wreck your life. So, you know, when he starts saying, hey, you know, it's important that we know each other. Why do you want to know that person? No, you don't. You don't want to know that person, and you don't want that person to know you. So this sort of rapport building is itself dangerous to participate in, because you are helping out somebody whose goals are to cause you problems.
Correct. Right. And I've never met you before, but I do know a great deal about you, and it's important I get to know you better. And the reason why I say that is because this is an important issue that brings you here today. Okay, it's very serious, and I think I would be neglectful if I didn't at least try and understand who you are. That's all I'm trying to do.
So what he's doing here is he's not promising anything. He's being very careful not to promise anything or even to suggest anything, except that there's a little bit of a hint there. There's a little bit of a hint of this is an opportunity for you to start explaining yourself, and maybe, you know, maybe that might help is kind of the underlying suggestion here. But he's not going to say anything, you know, as crass as, you know, if you help us, then, you know, maybe we'll drop the charges. Because if they did that, they'd have some problems.
Do you understand?
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Do you feel intimidated right now? Are you scared or anything like that?
No.
Okay. Will you let me know if that ever happens?
I will let you know.
Okay. All right.
Who's going to speak up to say, you know what, you're kind of making me intimidated right now? Nobody ever speaks up to say that, but because now that he's put that out there and said, you'll let me know if you're feeling intimidated, if he makes that argument later that he was feeling intimidated, it's going to be hard for him to overcome that. That's something that's essentially there as ammunition for cross-examination for future Crown Counsel.
If there's anything I say that is offensive, or that you find offensive, or if there's anything I say that you don't like, will you let me know?
Yes.
Okay. The reason why I say that, because I don't want to offend. That's not why I'm here. Okay. I do know this. My understanding is you were in a special needs class in high school. Okay. It was a small classroom, specifically designed for people with special needs. My understanding is that there were a number of students in that class who excelled very well in certain areas and didn't do very well, or were they performed poorly in other areas. So there were, there was a mixture of individuals in the class, and the idea behind being placed in a special needs class was to focus on the areas where they didn't perform as well. In my conversation with you, in my experience with people with special needs, because I've been doing this a long time, and I have actually family members who have special needs.
That may or may not be true, because the detective is allowed to lie to him. And, when he says, I have family members with special needs, maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. It may just be an attempt to sort of get closer to the accused.
Because of a variety of different reasons. I can recognize people who have special needs. And so the reason why I'm saying that is because I want to make sure you understand what I'm saying. Okay? I don't want to be saying something that is going to confuse you or make you feel uncomfortable or make you feel scared. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
And again, this goes to the issue of voluntariness, and he's trying to establish, just because this guy has a special needs background, that, he's not failing to comprehend what's going on. He's not misunderstanding that, and he's doing his best also to establish that this person is fairly with it and fairly understanding of the process here.
Now, my understanding is your dad's not working. He used to work for Rogers, but he's out of work right now. But he's looking for work. Is that right?
I do not wish to confirm or deny that.
Okay. Your mom works for CompuGen. That's a computer company. Is that?
I do not wish to answer that.
Okay. All right. Are you in any kind of relationship right now with an intimate partner? I mean, do you have a girlfriend or a?
I do not wish to answer that.
Okay. All right.
And that question, as we'll see, is probably a meatier question. So there's a reason why he's saying I don't want to answer that question. But you see also, once you start saying, here's the things I will answer and here's the things I won't, the detective can sort of feel out where your pain points are. And you're giving away a lot of information just by what you choose to answer and what you choose not to. So the better approach is not to answer anything.
What about friends? Do you have a group of friends that you typically hang around with?
I do not wish to answer that.
You don't wish to answer that. If I was to say Jeffrey Wan, would you know who I'm talking about?
I don't recall that name.
Jeffrey Wan, W-A-N?
I don't recall.
You don't? Okay. What about Brendan Levine?
I don't recall.
Okay, all right. Do you know a fellow by the name of Michael White?
I do not wish to answer that.
Okay, all right. Okay. What about Michael Transer? Sorry. Yeah, Tanzer. Michael Tanzer. Do you know Michael Tanzer?
I don't wish to answer that.
No. Okay. Do you have a Facebook account?
Yes.
You do, right? Am I correct to suggest that the name of your account profile is your name?
What I will say that it is correct to assume that most people have a Facebook account with the same name as their real name.
Right.
And I bet he thinks that was a clever answer, but he's giving away a lot here, because when they find a Facebook account, they're going to want to confirm that it's his account. And that's not a really clever answer here. He's giving away so much.
And do you have any other online social media accounts?
That is my only online social media account.
Okay, so you know what I mean by social media? I'm talking about like
Facebook, Twitter, etc.
Yeah, Instagram, Snapchat. What are some of the other ones? I'm trying to think. I'm old. I'm 51 years old, so I can't. You young guys have.
Yeah, we know all of that.
The different technological ways of communicating. What are the other ones? Facebook, Instagram. I'm just thinking about what my kids use.
Twitter,
yeah, okay, I knew that one. Snapchat. FaceTime. Do you need an account for that?
I've actually never used that before.
FaceTime? It's like FaceTime is like Skype, though, isn't it?
I think it's easier, a more convenient way of using Skype.
Right,
basically.
because you communicate over Facebook, but it's a video form of communication, correct?
I actually didn't know that.
Oh, it is
Because
what-
I've just heard of the name.
Oh, okay. Because I've actually used it, but this is going to sound strange. I've used it, but I don't know how I've used it. People have actually called me on FaceTime, and I've been on my I have a little iPad, and then all of a sudden I'm talking to somebody, and I can see them, and they can see me.
So, and you see here, not only has the detective got him to confirm that he's got a Facebook account and that it's probably under his own name, but he's also got him talking again. You know, the accused was sort of falling, he was retreating back into a shell of, I don't want to answer that, I don't want to answer that. And you could see his demeanor shifting, where he was becoming more and more sort of putting up those barriers. And now the detective has very skillfully pulled him back out of that and has got him talking again, which, again, is never to the accused's benefit.
One day you're going to get old, and you're going to realize what I'm going through right now, because it's hard. It's hard as a 51-year-old guy to try and keep up with the technology, and by the time you get to my age, technology is going to be out of control. But you're a bit of a computer guy. You like computers, eh? You're into software programming, all that kind of stuff. Have you got a particular area of expertise? Like, do you write code, or what do you do?
So I'm just going to stop here. We earlier heard that this detective is normally posted to the sex crimes department. How many people here think that that doesn't involve a very thorough knowledge of various social media things? Yeah, it's absolutely going to involve social media things. When he says that he doesn't know about what these things are and he doesn't understand, and he's playing dumb here, because of course he knows, because there's plenty of such crimes that occur over these platforms. Knowing this is his job. The accused is being lied to. He doesn't really get it here, but he is.
I don't wish to answer that.
You don't wish to tell me what you like to do and what you don't like to do as far as...
No, I don't wish to answer that.
Okay, well, going back to the social media accounts, my understanding is you have a LinkedIn account.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, but you're not active on LinkedIn. Do you know what I mean by that?
I don't sign in daily.
Right. And the information you have on LinkedIn's fairly limited.
Yes.
Yeah. And my understanding is your Facebook account is your activity on Facebook is kind of sporadic. Sometimes you're on, and then you go off, and then you go back on, and you close down your account, and then you open it back up.
I don't know about social media, but oh right, we found your other account that you didn't mention here, and we've gone through them in a whole bunch of detail. You know, we've got all this information. Come on, man.
Why is that?
I don't wish to answer that.
Am I right to assume that you've closed your Facebook account down in the past?
I may have done it once.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. When did you close it down?
Did you say when or why?
No, when?
I don't remember. It was quite a while ago.
Oh, okay. And how long was it closed down for?
I would say at least a year.
Oh, okay. And then, am I right to assume that you just recently opened it back up again?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And when did you open it back up?
I think about a month or two ago.
About a month or two ago. Okay.
So when you think about, how he was saying, oh, well, maybe, a lot of people use their real name, but I don't want to confirm if I did. Do you think here he's given up enough information that they could positively confirm that this Facebook account that they think is his? Because I do. It's going to be real hard now for him to say, well, that's not actually my Facebook account, or even just prove it. You want to admit this into court. You need to prove that it's relevant. You need to show that it's, well, now they've got that. So he gave that away for nothing because, of course, he's not gaining anything here. There's very few ways, if any, for him to put any points on the board for himself. And he certainly hasn't so far.
And how many friends do you have on Facebook?
I don't remember the exact count.
Okay. Are you active on Facebook?
My my rate of a sign-in is inconsistent. Sometimes I might sign in for a couple of days, but then might not sign in again for another week or so.
Oh, okay. Is there a reason for that?
I just don't have a specific pattern when deciding to use Facebook.
You know, I'm just thinking in terms of a routine. Like when I actually use Facebook a lot. I'm surprised, being as old as I am. But one of the reasons why I use Facebook is because it keeps me. I don't post a lot of stuff on Facebook because I'm not that time. I'm kind of shy that way. I don't like to tell people what I'm doing. But I like looking at what other people are doing. And I don't have a lot of friends, but I have a few, and I kind of keep up to date with what they're doing, and I watch and I look. And so as a routine, I don't want to say daily, maybe daily. I go onto my Facebook and I check, but I don't post a great deal of information because I for some reason, I don't know, in my mind I just don't like to reveal what I'm doing. When you say you're on Facebook, what do you mean by that?
I simply mean that I'm occasionally signing in to use it minimally.
Okay. So when you say using, is that are you posting stuff on your web?
It could be
profile?
posting, or it could be private messaging another individual on Facebook.
Oh, I see. Okay. And what kind of stuff do you typically post on your Facebook?
There's no specific pattern as to the type of content I post.
No. It's just random stuff, depending on whatever you're thinking of the day, or.
You could think of it like that.
Mm-hmm. And messaging, what kind of conversations are you typically having on Messenger?
I don't wish to answer that.
Oh, okay. All right. Am I to understand that you've had some military experience in the past?
All right, so I'm going to cut it off here. I think it's been a long enough video here. So what we've seen is a little bit about the right to counsel and how the detective handled that, and a lot more about, we can see the detective teasing out bits of information. The accused now having refreshed himself with the lawyer clearly gave him what I would consider to be some good advice, which is, do not move the mouth. The mouth should stay closed. And unfortunately, the accused, as is fairly common, thinks he's smart enough to not follow that to the letter. He thinks that he's going to pick and choose what questions he answers, what questions he doesn't. Right now, the detective is not going for a hard press. So what we see is when the detective is challenged by this, I don't want to answer, his response is to keep moving, to keep the accused, to keep him from establishing those barriers and becoming a pattern where he says, I'm not going to answer this, and where he can't get past that. Because what he really doesn't want is he doesn't want the accused to shut down entirely and just refuse to answer. Because if he gets to a point where the accused just absolutely refuses to entertain his questions, then he's done. That'll be it. So anytime the accused starts getting into that pattern and starts sort of shutting down and putting those barriers up, he moves to a new topic. He moves to something where he's fairly confident that he can get the accused to start responding again, because he does not want the interview to get shut down by an accused who just stonewalls entirely. So this approach that the accused is taking of answering some questions and not others is actually quite fatal to what he's trying to do, which is to stop talking. You may not think it's a big thing when you're the guy sitting in the chair, but from the perspective of a lawyer watching this, he's giving the opening that the detective needs. And, I haven't actually watched this at this point. I haven't watched the full details, but every sign at this stage points to bad results. As a defense lawyer watching this, if this was my client, I'm going, oh no, stop. I'm sure that the duty counsel lawyer would have told him, don't answer any questions. No questions. Doesn't matter what, And unfortunately, this guy just can't follow that. So we'll see how this goes in part 3. This one's already going to be long enough. I apologize if this is too long. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope this has been educational. Please like the video, share it with your friends, subscribe to see more content, hit the notification bell so that you can see it as it goes up. This one, as I mentioned, is going to be demonetized because YouTube has policies about sort of controversial events, which would include this. So this is entirely a Patreon-supported video. So with that in mind, I'd like to thank $30 Patreon supporters Steve Browning, $50 Patreon supporters George and D. Mo, as well as $10 Patreon supporters Ma Buddy Keith, Process Eng, Stephen Larson, Mark D., General Counsel of the CCFR, John Robinson, Tim Rogers, Roy Haddock, Freckles Dack, Jean-Alexandre Tessier, Cameron Johnson, Sir Goat, Sights and Arms Limited, Chaba Hollow, Peter H., Craig Kwan, Akin Coxall, North Central Process Service, Toys Are for Boys, Ian Vaughn, Milan Vrekic, Terrence Griffiths, Doug Thompson, Brad Crooker, Jason Harrington, Lee Kiso, Mark Stout, Michelle Stotzel, Scott Sweetman, Mike Rhodes, Alvaro Bataille, DF, Stacey Cartmel, Tactical Advantage TV Canada, Ian S., Dave Leslie, Juan, Donald Duncan, Stefan Conquest, Darren Duell, Kevin Fleet, Sean Crane, and Ian Hutchinson, as well as a couple of people who would prefer to remain anonymous. If you wish to support this channel, there's a link to my Patreon below. Thank you for watching, and I hope this has armed you with knowledge.